Welcome, everyone. I'm John Clarkson, president of the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association. We're very happy to have you here for our June meeting. Our special guest is Albany Mayor Kathy Sheehan, and she'll be presenting in just a moment on a number of issues in city governance. But first, I want to make sure everyone knows our meeting next month will be on June 17th. 7 o'clock p.m. and our guest will be Tina Lieberman from the Sustainability Advisory Committee. So I hope you'll be able to join us then. With that, I am going to go to Mayor Sheehan to give us a presentation. Mayor Sheehan.
Great, thank you. And we talked about leaving plenty of time for questions, and I know there are a number of topics that you're interested in hearing about. So, and I'm happy to at some point share my screen and show you slides if people ask for them. But I want to start with talking about the good news, which is the COVID Recovery Task Force that we have created to ensure that we're doing as much outreach as possible and getting input from the various sectors in our city around what their needs are and what we need to know as we look to invest this really unprecedented funding that is coming to the city of Albany as a result of the rescue plan. This is funding that I've been lobbying for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which is a bipartisan organization, Democratic mayors, Republican mayors. We don't know who's who. We don't ask because we really all face many of the same challenges. But we've been lobbying for this funding really since the first CARES Act was passed. And it is really designed to first ensure that we're able to balance our budgets and to replace the revenue that municipalities lost as a result of the COVID pandemic. But then it also gives us the ability to really ensure that we're responding to the needs that are unique to each of our municipalities. And every municipality, while we share some of the same challenges, have different priorities. So, I have, mayor friends across the country, particularly out west, who are struggling with very large homeless encampments and homeless populations and looking to figure out how they can use this funding to address those issues. In the city of Albany, we're really looking at what the needs are for our smaller arts organizations, for example, who weren't able to access the funding that was available to arts organizations at the federal level. We want to focus on our restaurants who don't access or aren't able to access the restaurant recovery money that's available. And we really want to do this work with a focus on where everyone started when this pandemic began, because we didn't all start from the same place. We had neighborhoods that were experiencing blight and decline and lack of access to resources and lack of access to good jobs, lack of access to adequate health care before the pandemic started. And the pandemic exacerbated all of those areas for those businesses and those residents. And so this is really I'm excited about the opportunity. It's a great opportunity for us to come together as a community and really assess where we are, where we want to be, and listen to one another. So we've assembled a group that is tasked with looking at there are 4 buckets of money that are identified in the rescue plan. And so one of them is so large that we've created 2 working groups within that. But you're going to be hearing from us very soon. The working groups are going to be meeting and talking about outreach, and we're going to be providing survey monkeys and really relying on the neighborhood associations to spread the word throughout your organizations to ensure that we're getting the feedback that we need. And so one area where we really need feedback is we're going to need to understand what is the real size of the impending eviction / rent moratorium going to have on the residents of the city of Albany, on our landlords, And really what we want to prevent, right, is people walking away. We saw it in 2008, 2009 with the financial crisis, where we had people just walk away from properties, which created blight, abandonment, and other issues in our neighborhoods. And so we really want to get our arms around what that number is. And then we need to really break down the resources that are available in the rescue plan, and then the unmet needs, so that we can understand the scope and the size of the problem in the city of Albany. We also really want to address, those social determinants of health, because we know that we had significant health disparities in health outcomes in the city of Albany, not only with respect to people who became ill with COVID-19, but then with access to and trust of the vaccinations. So, we're really approaching this. We want to remind people of where we were in 2020. I resisted the urge to give you a little bit of my state of the city, because I know I want to get to questions. But, we entered 2020 in a really good place. We had significant investment happening throughout the city. We were continuing to see a really strong balance in the development of affordable housing and the development of market rate housing. And we were a year away from paying off our landfill debt, which created an additional roughly $5.6 million of funding that was available in our operating budget. And so we entered 2020 with every reason to be optimistic. And as we exit 2020 and are into 2021, I continue to be really optimistic, because during the course of this really unprecedented, once in a lifetime pandemic, we succeeded in landing a huge construction project at the Port of Albany that is going to result in green jobs and really demonstrate what the green economy can be and what it can spur from the standpoint of entrepreneurship and business attraction to the city of Albany. And we saw the continued investment in our downtown. There is only one construction project that stopped because of COVID, and that was the hotel at Quackenbush Square. But every other construction project continued. And the only delays that we saw were related to the ability to actually get materials for some of those construction projects. And we continue to have a really healthy pipeline of investments in the city. So I'm excited, and I just want to put everyone on notice that I'm going to be relying on those of you who are part of the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association to be part of this conversation, to be part of the needs assessment, so that as we look to get this money out into our community, both this year and as we build the 2021 budget, the 2022 budget, that both myself, my administration, our commissioners, and our common council members have a really good understanding of what the needs are. So just to close that out, I want to make one thing clear. This funding is coming to the city of Albany. It will be incumbent upon the city, but through our budget process with our common council, to actually spend this funding. The work of the collaborative and the task force, is to make sure that we have a good, deep understanding of what the needs are across sectors. They will be making recommendations about those needs, not granting this funding. So that will be the work that lies ahead for us, that we want to make sure we're doing with the community. I will say I'm trying to listen and hear and not, allow my ideas to crowd out other good ideas. But one thing that I would love to see come out of this funding is for us to be able to create some room in our budget for participatory budgeting. And I think that's a goal that has existed in this city for a long time. Because of financial constraints, that wasn't possible. But I think that we could really, I think spark a lot of great ideas and conversations if some portion of this money could be used as a participatory budgeting for participatory budgeting. But that's just my idea. And, I want to listen to the residents of the community. I want to hear from this task force about what the needs are. I also want to give an update on where we are with respect to some of the initiatives that I know Pine Hills has been particularly interested in. You've been interested in our 2025 trees by 2025. And so we appreciate the enthusiasm. We want to make sure that we are, getting that enthusiasm to work, helping us to identify places to put trees, and then commitments from individuals to actually water and care for and ensure that those trees survive and are loved. We know that there used to be a practice in the city of Albany. In some neighborhoods, entire sidewalks were made of asphalt. In other neighborhoods like Pine Hills, particularly in the student area, when new sidewalks were put in, the tree lawn was filled with asphalt. So I've succeeded in replacing all of the asphalt sidewalks. The tree lawn asphalt is the next next on the list. And we do see this tree initiative as an opportunity as we're creating tree beds and making sure that we're responding to demands for trees in neighborhoods, that we're addressing that asphalt issue. I will share with you that I made it very clear to our engineering department when I became mayor, and then I made it clear again after some people, I get it, asphalt's easy. Didn't quite get the message that asphalt is no longer a permitted material for use on our sidewalks anywhere. And John, with that, I'll turn it over because I know you had some other areas you wanted to hit on, and we can talk about that.
Well, thank you very much, Your Honor, for addressing us, being here tonight, and also for your response to our concern about the blacktop sections that, as you pointed out, were filled in some time ago. Engineers sometimes see things from a different perspectives from the rest of us, particularly as regards streetscape and streetscape architecture. So we, as we promised, will work with you very much. We want to work with you on the trees initiative. And as part of that, as removing the asphalt strips to put in trees, and we'd like to help work to identify them and also to identify ways that they could be watered. So we're very, very grateful for this. There's one thing in your note that I wasn't quite sure I understood, which was identifying areas where a different hard top covering would be. Are you thinking like brickwork, or what is that alluding to?
Yeah, so for example, in my neighborhood here on First Street, we have brickwork that is covers the tree lawn, or the area where when I lived in the suburban part of the city, we called the tree lawn. So there's sidewalk and then there's decorative brickwork. There are, as along Quail, the water department used that to create swales and streetscape that allows us to store stormwater runoff. So, there are all kinds of possibilities from a sustainability standpoint. We want to make sure that we're addressing those. When we talk to the folks on First and Second in West Hill, where we were replacing asphalt sidewalk, what we heard from the council members there and the residents there was we just created wider sidewalks. So it's sidewalk all the way to the curb, and with tree beds. So, lots of different treatments that we can look at and work with you on.
Fantastic. Thank you. Questions for the mayor? Remember to unmute yourself.
Well, while people are pondering their questions, I would like to give a shout out to APD, who has been really doing an amazing job under really, really difficult circumstances. I know that, there are a lot of issues that we're hearing from our neighborhoods, around, as the weather gets nicer, right? It's noise, it's dirt bikes, ATVs. But we also are, moving into a period of time where last year we saw an unprecedented increase in gun violence in the city. And so, they are down significantly with respect to the number of officers that we have. And they've done some remarkable stuff just within the last few days. So, they are really stepping up as they always do for our residents. And just want to thank them while I have the opportunity to do that.
Well, people may either be formulating questions or not understanding that they're muted. So I'll step into the void, Your Honor. Lights in the park, as you know, has been an issue of controversy. There have been several articles in the paper you've spoken out. Our association did address it, you could say late. I mean, we did not face the outpouring of problems back in December because our neighborhood is on the west side of the park and it's not where the entrance or exit is. But we don't take the view that, that's somebody else's problem. If one neighborhood is affected, particularly our neighborhoods, everyone should be concerned about that as well about the impact on the park and access to the park. So our resolution acknowledged the problems and asked, recognizes that they must be addressed. At the same time, we noted that a lot of people do like the event wherever they, whether they're coming from uptown, downtown, or France, it doesn't really matter. People do enjoy it. And there's some good in bringing people to the city center. But we do recognize the problems. And as I understand the situation now, you have basically returned the permit requests to the Police Athletic League with a request for a number of informational and other items. Could you briefly describe that for us?
Yeah, I mean, look, the concerns that were brought to me by the neighborhood associations that surround the park, as well as the Conservancy, I think they initially approached it as a conversation about how to minimize the impacts of lights in the park. But by the time they finished meeting and then invited me in to have a conversation with them, I think that they had come to the conclusion that there really isn't a way to mitigate those impacts without really radically changing what lights in the park looks like. And they questioned whether or not PAL would be able to make enough in donations to really justify the work behind the event and what it would take to put it on. And so I communicated that to PAL. There are some very significant impacts on this historic park. We're celebrating a major anniversary of that park this year. And it is the large portions of the park are unusable for months during the setup, the production of, and then the takedown of this show. And, it really is unheard of for a park of that size in the center of the city to have that much of it unusable by our residents for such a long period of time in order to raise funding for, while it's a very good and, wonderful program, for what is in essence a private entity. So, I think the other piece of it that I was shocked by, I will confess, I don't go to lights in the park. When I would commute to and from my neighborhood, I would see all the traffic, and it was just not something that I was interested in driving through. I had no idea how large it had gotten. When we approve the permit, we don't approve like a set number of displays. And so I think that, learning about the size of the electrical infrastructure that had been put in place by mainly volunteers, the number of displays, we need to level set. We need to understand what's there, what's in the ground. The Washington Park Conservancy had a consultant come to survey the playground area, which is going to get redone. And that individual expressed serious safety concerns for even allowing children in that playground area because they found, broken light bulb glass, they found binder clips, they found exposed wires. So I think we really need to take a hard look at this.
Great. Thank you for catching us up. Virginia, remember to unmute yourself, please.
Yes, I have. Thank you. I think, Mayor, you're aware of the Upper Madison fundraising efforts through the Upper Madison Street Fair, which obviously we were unable to hold last year. However, we're now in the process of planning for the possibility of doing this, which would be held in September 26th. So we just could like to get, and I know it's hard for you to predict what's going to happen in terms of, the guidelines, et cetera, but in your estimation or guess, do you believe that there's a possibility of being able to do that this year?
Absolutely. I would encourage you to get the application in. And what we're doing now, whereas last year we were not accepting applications because we were presuming that events weren't going to happen, we are approving events with the caveat that you'll have to follow whatever COVID restrictions may be in place at the time of your event. So, for Alive at 5, for example, for June, we're still going to be virtual, but in July, we are planning to do Alive at 5. There'll be ticketed events, so we'll control the size of the crowd. I mean, the tickets will be free, and I think we're focusing on making those tickets available first, for example, to essential workers, and giving them the first opportunity to access, the Alive at 5 tickets. We know it'll be imperfect. It's a big space, so it's not as though we can block off all access to the Corning Preserve, but we believe that it'll be manageable. So, I think, when people think about the Madison Street Fair, it has a brand. And so people have an expectation for what's that is like. And I think that it does lend itself to, being more like a farmer's market type environment, which I think will have an absolute, green light still in September.
Thank you. Bob Ward, it looks like you have a question.
Actually, I was going to ask the same question Virginia did, and Virginia has been involved in the street fair a lot longer than I have, so it's appropriate that she raised the question. So I'll bring up a different, not really a question, it's more of a comment, I guess. Mayor, I think you're aware, Deb and I have been blessed with 2 grandchildren, and when we have the opportunity, we have just been have so much enjoyed taking them to Westland Hills Park and some of the other playgrounds in the city, and we're always struck by the relatively small number of people that we see at Westland Hills, which has a wonderful playground and a lot of open area, or Ridgefield Park, and we know that excuse me, we know that Washington Park, as you were discussing earlier, gets a lot of people, of course, and deservedly so. Lincoln Park, I think, gets big crowds. I'm less familiar with some of the other parks and playgrounds, but so I guess just a comment that there are many of us who do appreciate excuse me, I have a cold, do appreciate the parks and playgrounds, and if there's anything that can be done to increase awareness perhaps among people who aren't as familiar with them, I know that there are many of us who would be happy to join in that. I think there are you know, there's the Washington Park Conservancy that helps promote Washington Park and you know, and preserve and protect the park. I don't know whether there might be any value in thinking of creating similar organizations for any of the other parks throughout the city. So just some random comments on that area.
Yeah, and you know, I'm excited that you know, we have continued with our parks plan and redoing our parks, and actually Ridgefield and Westland Hills are on the list for this year. So you know, we continue to plug away at you know, really creating the, you know, parks that reflect the desires of the neighborhoods that immediately surround them. You know, that's typically who we reach out to for input, you know, with respect to those park plans. But, you know, we did a really cool feature at Black Lives Matter Park over off Livingston. If you're into zip lines, you know, that's definitely worth the trip. And the other thing that I'm really excited about is that we opened the Brother Yusuf Trail at the Tivoli Preserve. And the thing about that's great for grandparents is that it's a accessible trail, so you can push a stroller on it. You know, it's got an easy slope to it. What was a steep slope is now a winding trail, and it takes you down to the daylighting project. So while it's not playground equipment, that's another great place for kids to have fun.
Thank you.
And Bob and Mayor Sheehan, I'd like to add just a little note on that you may not be aware. We've been raising the idea of a citywide Friends of Albany Parks, as some other areas have. It's been discussed at Cana, and there was very positive reaction to it. And I've also discussed it with Justin Atlas at the Department of Recreation, who incidentally was a member of the Bethlehem Friends of Parks and Recreation Group. He lived at the time when that was founded. And it might be a way to help some of the smaller parks. The Conservancy exists for Washington Park. Buckingham Pond has a group. The Lincoln Park has an alliance that supports it, and Tivoli has a group as well. But all the other parks don't really have that voice or that expertise. So it's something that's being talked about, very nascent stages, but hopefully it may be something that will help. Are there other questions for Mayor Sheehan? Speak up if you would like. It's hard for me to see everyone
So I just have
once.
I just have one quick question. I was glad to hear, Mayor, that your idea is participatory budgeting for the funding that we received. I know that was something that I served on one of the subcommittees for your transition committee back in 2013, 14.
Yeah.
And that was definitely part of our, one of our recommendations. And it would be really great. My only concern actually is that this is one-time funding. It would be cool if somehow that could be seed funding for, being able to not only do it once with this, one shot, but to figure out a way to build it. Is that, I know you said this is only your idea, but is that something that you're thinking of how to make that happen?
Yeah, I guess the way that I'm looking at it, Leah, is that, wouldn't be participatory budgeting for the whole thing, but that, given that we're able to replace our lost revenue and that we were supposed to be entering 2021 with an additional $5.6 million of operating revenue, that would have given us the opportunity to take, let's say, a $2 million, chunk of money and start the participatory budgeting process with that, and then build on that. So, yeah, it's not, I think to take the whole thing, that's a lot to swallow, but to take a part of our operating budget, and have that be participatory, we could seed it with this money, but then to your point, it would become part of the process.
Thank you. We have, by the way, for everyone's knowledge, placed the mayor's presentation on the COVID Recovery Task Force and the American Recovery Plan revenues on our website. It's probably on yours as well, but
Yes, and just to thank you, John, for saying that. We have a landing page for the Recovery Task Force that is going to have the minutes from every meeting, the recordings of every meeting. We're going to be moving into the subcommittee meetings. Those will also be there, and also survey opportunities. So, we're envisioning it as a really interactive space.
fantastic. We'll link to that as well as soon as our website technician gets around to it. Judy Deshaies has her hand up. Councilwoman Deshaies.
Thank you. I do want to know that one of my frustrations with the way the federal language is written is that there seems to be a requirement for very clear connection to COVID. And I'm saying that partially because I feel like that hasn't been emphasized to anybody who might be listening in on this. And I think that I'm concerned about some expectations about, oh, $85 million is going to solve every problem that we have in the world, when it is supposed to be very much directed at those people who have been most adversely in organizations and the city programming, et cetera, that's been most affected by COVID. Two things. I am curious how we argue that participatory budgeting is COVID related. If we weren't doing that before, then what's the COVID connection there? And the other thing is, Mary, you were talking, I keep on getting confused about the talk about 4 different buckets. And I thought I've thought that there's the $85 million that we're getting, and it's not allocated yet for specific projects or funding streams that are dedicated to specific things. I see where the federal legislation has 4 different areas that we can invest in, but I wasn't aware that it actually was divided up. And as I hear the conversation, it sounds like it is divided up. So there's, if you could clarify that. And you also mentioned that there are 4, I like to refer to it as categories of funding. Maybe there's better terminology. And that one is so large that it's being broken down into 2. So I'd like clarification on that.
Sure. Well, first of all, when I talk about buckets, there's no amounts that are attached to this. First of all, secondly, we're only getting 80.7 million. So the 85 was got a little bit of a haircut. But so I think when I spoke about this, I was talking about the impacts of COVID, right? I said that we're looking at doing a needs assessment for the impacts that COVID had, for example, on our smaller arts organizations, on our landlords, on our restaurants, on our small businesses, including our entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs didn't have access to PPP money in the same way if you started a new business that that established businesses were. So this is all focused on the impacts of COVID. And the other thing that has been made clear in the guidance is that anything that resulted in an exacerbation of the impacts, a disparate impact of the impacts of COVID, is going to be presumptively covered by this funding. So, for example, if the lack of access to walk-up health clinics, if one of the things that you determine as part of your needs analysis is that you need walk-up health clinics in neighborhoods that didn't have access to testing, that's presumptively going to be viewed as a response to COVID, even if that walk-up health clinic offers services other than COVID testing. So addressing the disparate impacts that led to the disproportionate impacts of COVID on certain populations, the guidance, at least right now, indicates that that will presumptively be addressing the impacts of COVID. So when, one of the things that I've talked to the co-chairs of the task force about is that I'm very much resisting putting dollar amounts on any of this. Our needs are our needs. So we need a needs assessment. If as part of that needs assessment, the task force determines that we have a need for $180 million, we need to know that, right? So that we can understand what we need to be advocating for. And so, yes, it's important that, and the task force understands that this has to address the impacts of COVID, and we have to engage our residents and our businesses so that we can fully understand what those impacts were. And with respect to participatory budgeting, I think that that is very much aligned with addressing the impacts of COVID, because we're talking about participatory budgeting around asking our residents, how would you spend this funding to address the negative impacts that COVID has had on your neighborhood? What does that look like, right? So I think that that it doesn't necessarily have to be COVID funding. As I explained to Leah, the fact that we are now no longer going to have to basically steal from ourselves all the hard work that we did to get an additional $5.6 million into our operating budget is going to free up funding for us to be able to have that conversation. So we may need to seed it with COVID money. Maybe we start out talking about the impacts of COVID, or we may not. That's a TBD once we understand the needs.
Thank you, Mayor.
I just
Jay
want
Meeks
to,
has a question. Judy, I'm sorry. Jay Meeks has a question.
Oh, sorry. Good evening, Mayor and Council Member. Hi, Leah. I'm your neighbor across the street. I've just decamped to Detroit for the year, though, but I'll be back in the fall. I'm new to the association. I don't know if we did introductions or not, but I was late getting into the Zoom meeting. But I simply raised my hand because I think John Hammer had been trying to say something forever. He was waving at the screen.
I'll wait until
Thanks,
you're
Jay.
done. I'll wait until you're done.
I'm all done. That was all for you.
Oh, well, thank you. What I want to know is, in the past, the big budget issue has been that $12.5 million we're trying to squeeze out of Andrew Cuomo. Is that still in play? Is that still part of the needs of the city? And is that still on the table, or what?
Yes, it is part of our permanent ask of the state for its capital city. We did receive that funding. We actually received the last little piece of that. So even with the uncertainty around COVID, it was in the state budget, which tells me that the state has it. So look, I would love for them to identify a permanent place to put it, so that we're not asking for it every year. But I'm confident that we've made our case, because even with the challenge of the state's budget this past fiscal year, the 12 million was in.
Mayor, I was wondering also if you could catch us up on the fair housing package and how that is going. Pine Hills expressed general support for all of the concepts. We did raise a couple of exceptions with the rental properties registry ROP piece, because one, the landlords on our group thought it would be nice if they could get the notice prior to when the ROP ran out. And we also thought that the initiative has to, if ROPs are important, we think it's very important to bring in the, whatever it is, it's probably half the rental properties in the city, it is estimated, do not and have never had an ROP. So if you're going to straighten up the process for those who fill it out, we thought it only fair and helpful if we tried to bring everyone and every rental property into the system. So that's our specific point. But generally, how is that package going, and what do you see happening here?
Well, I mean, it's in front of the council. They're going to hold hearings on it and deliberate over it. I think that we did the best that we could to get a lot of input and did a lot of outreach in order to take into consideration the concerns that are expressed by landlords. I think that one of the one of the key things around the ROP issue is that it will now be mandatory, or if you want to bring an eviction proceeding, you can't commence that proceeding if you don't have an ROP, and you have to post those ROPs in your apartment. One of the issues that we have with rental properties that are not compliant is that they're very hard to find. So when I bought this home in Arbor Hill, there was an unregistered illegal apartment in the basement. That's what we're trying to make sure that we're battling, and that we have real teeth in and real consequences for not having an ROP.
Thanks. I know your time is short.
like
Do
to
you have
add
any more
something.
time tonight?
I'd like to add something. Can you hear
May
me?
I ask who you are? Yes. and
Honor
identify
Conklin.
yourself. Oh,
My
Anna,
name is
thank you.
Honor. I'd like to bring to your attention a new website. It's has the history and documentation on the development process for the Rise New Scotland. I'd like to give you the URL. It's Michael-Kalin, Kalin .net/new-Scotland-outrage-outrage.html. This project was approved by the use of a deception and threats, and it does not comply with the USDO, and it's just one of many of the projects that Christopher Spencer oversaw, and you really should look at what's going on in the planning department.
Thanks, Honor. Just a suggestion, as that's rather a long URL, perhaps you should post a message on the Pine Hills Neighborhood Google group, because it will be difficult to transcribe that, but thank you. Mayor, I know your time is running short. Do you have time for more, or have we gotten our full measure of you tonight?
I'm tired of hearing myself, but I'm happy to continue to answer your questions, but I know you have other business to attend to, so.
All right. Well, we thank you very much for visiting with us, and we hope you'll be back, I don't know, next year, perhaps sometimes when we have actual meetings in each other's presence.
I will happily be there. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Fantastic. Thanks very
Thanks,
much.
everyone. Great to see you all.
All right, so let's regroup here. We will now start with our regular agenda. And that includes our committee and officer reports. We're going to go first to the
I have a
committee on
question.
university. Yes,
I have
Joe.
one question. Does anybody know the identification of that young woman who came on and just talked about that website? And I'm trying
That
to keep
was-
track of who was
Yes.
here. We had her phone number, but not the last name.
I will send you an email, John, that has it. It's Honor Conklin is her name.
Oh,
and she's a
Conklin,
member of our
okay.
Conklin, yes.
I got that. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Meeks, by the way, I'm sorry, I didn't get a request from you, I don't believe, for the Zoom link until after the meeting had started. So that was why you didn't get it earlier. So I did not see Luke Rumsey here. Let me check again. Luke, are you present? No, so we will have
Yeah,
to.
I don't think tonight is at 7 o'clock tonight is the online. I don't know if he has to attend, but it is the virtual commencement.
Oh, sure.
The
he's got a
actual
call for that.
virtual commencement is at 7, so he may actually need to be at that. I'm not sure.
Well, if he should come on later, we'll put on his section. So let's go to public safety. I know that NEU Officer Matt Carey is here. Matt.
Hello, folks. How are you tonight? Does anyone have any questions for me, or do you just want me to go right into the crime stats?
Might as well go right in.
Okay. From April 18th to May 18th, we've had 1 reported rape, 6 reported robberies, 5 aggravated assaults, 3 burglaries, 19 larcenies, 8 motor vehicle larcenies, no arsons. For the part 2 crimes, it's going to be 1 controlled substance incident, no fraud, 6 simple assaults, 13 criminal mischiefs, no forgeries, 1 authorized use, and all other is 13 for a grand total of 76 crimes.
Virginia?
Hi, Officer Carey.
Hello.
I'm not going to ask you to repeat that, but can I send you an email and you can just tell me what that is?
Sure.
Okay, so what's your,
It's going to be M-Carey, M-C-A-R-E-Y
yeah,
at albanyny.gov.
thank you very much.
Yep.
Anyone else with questions for Officer Carey? Just
I have a question. What is the area that these statistics apply to? Is it Pine Hills or is it a larger area than that?
This is just what I asked for was Pine Hills.
Okay. So does that probably, John, does that include other areas besides what the neighborhood association has or not?
You know, I can't say for sure if you're asking me, but there is a mapping that was done on Google some time ago. I think it's actually a little bit in some areas larger than how our current boundaries are described,
Okay, thank you.
but not significantly. Any other questions for Officer Carey? It doesn't look like it. I'm not seeing any. Judy Deshate. Judy Deshate has a question.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I know that there were a number of incidents in and around the Woodlawn basketball courts. I'm wondering how many of those incidents that you have listed might be associated with that. My guess is that you're getting asked some questions because it strikes me as being a higher number of crimes than people are used to hearing about. And that's the sense I get, and that I think that quite a few of them relate to that area. But that's, again, just my guess, and I am thinking some additional information about that might be helpful.
I think that only 3 of the 6 actually occurred at the basketball courts. And then after that last robbery arrest that I told you about in that email, it stopped for the time being.
And I have been kind of busy and was headed out of town. I really do appreciate your following up with me, the information that you provided me with on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, some of those robberies involved juveniles, and we really can't get into the details.
Right, I understand. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Officer Carey. So
Okay.
I don't believe Carolyn Keefe is with us tonight.
I have her report. She
Okay,
sent me her
Leah.
report. Yep.
This is the Midtown Pine Hills Improvement Group report.
Yeah, it's called the Midtown Pine Hills Committee. It's not an improvement group, just Midtown Pine Hills Committee.
Formerly known as FIG.
Correct, but we don't say that. So the next Midtown Pine Hills Committee meeting is this coming Monday, May 24th at 6:30 p.m. It will be a Zoom meeting, and anyone interested in joining should send an email to Carolyn's email address, which you can get by emailing the neighborhood association, and we can hook you up with that. Let's see, she says there's not too much to report. We're still working on the trash and litter subcommittee, where that committee will actually meet next Wednesday, May 26th at 6 p.m. And Frank Violi from DGS will be there to do some brainstorming and assistance with us. So we're looking forward to that. She did say in her notes that we were still waiting to hear back about the trees and blacktop letter, but we did get an update from the mayor about that at least it's, our concern is definitely on her radar, and, we don't have, I don't believe we have anything in writing yet about it, but, we're looking forward to.
We do, Leah.
Oh, do
She
we?
wrote us a letter.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, at the time Carolyn sent me this, I did not have, she told me we still don't have the letter.
Yeah, we just got it today.
Okay, well, there you go. We're working on getting things in place for the mural on the House of Glass. Virginia and Carolyn met with the artist recently, and the artist and Carolyn plan to meet with the building owner soon. The mural will be painted in the fall. And when we say the House of Glass, we're talking about the House of Glass on Ontario Street in the Midtown Pine Hills area, not the other one in the Upper Madison area. The mural will be painted in the fall, and we are talking about possibly including the community in the process. So stay tuned and let us know if you're interested. And yes, and also just a big shout out to Luke, who isn't here, but his new initiative that he started this year with students getting credit for picking up trash is very well received by folks. So, so that's it. That's the Midtown Pine Hills Committee update.
Thanks, Leah. Why don't you keep going? Because I'm afraid I skipped you on zoning and code enforcement.
Okie dokie. So zoning and code enforcement, I have three things. One is the South Pine porch that had been on the BZA agenda for a while. A decision was rendered by the BZA, and they fully supported the applicant. So that's a good thing because the board also supported the applicant. So yay, a win for us and our neighbors. The committee just met yesterday to discuss concerns. These are ongoing concerns in the neighborhood about temporary signs, usually on rental properties, that essentially wind up being permanent signs. They wind up getting nailed to the property. They're very large. And they're more prevalent in some parts of the neighborhood rather than others. So we are hoping to find a solution. We've been talking about some potential language changes to the USDO, and we're hoping to work with council members on this and also the planning department to find a workable solution legislatively to kind of have something codified about this problem that has been going on for years. And then the third thing is that this is really, the timing of this is because the council is going through their USDO review. I know Judy's very, very digging in on that. And so we are trying to pay attention to that. The committee has access to the website that has a lot of the updates from, I think, the planning department. I'm not sure we've had a chance to really look into it yet, but we're going to see if there are other things we may want to weigh in on related to that. And that's the zoning and code enforcement update.
Thanks, Leah.
Mm-hmm.
Upper Madison Group, Marilyn Douglas.
Okay, well, Virginia mentioned the possibility of the fair. It sounds like we might be able to put September 26th, the last Sunday in September, on our calendars. So it may happen, but obviously it's a wait and see right now. Our first activity is going to be the Pine Hills Film Series, which is showing The Great Dictator. And it will be shown at the Madison Theater next Thursday, which is the 27th of May at 7 p.m. It is free, but we do ask for a donation of $5, which just helps to pay for the films and any other things that we need to pay for publicity, etc. So hopefully we'll see some of you there, and please tell your friends and neighbors if they fancy coming out to see a good old film with Charlie Chaplin taking on the role of Hitler. The Madison Theater next Thursday is the place to go. We're also reaching out to the Elks Club to see if we can resurrect the Monday night concert series that actually was going on for, I think, 5 or 6 years now. Obviously, we didn't have it in 2020, but maybe we can have it beginning, and they would begin mid-July and go through the end of August on Monday evenings, again at 7 o'clock. Also we're putting together a proposal to the Price Chopper to allow for to improve pedestrian safety going through the parking lot to the store. We've been working with a couple of people in the neighborhood to come up with a plan, which we hope that they will accept. Which made me think, oh, and also the DeWitt Clinton Park was cleaned up last week. We have a new historic marker which will be dedicated in the beginning of August. We're thinking around August 9th. And we thank the city for fixing the circle planter, which was put in last year and got destroyed by snow plows and heaven knows what. Anyway, it's now planted and is being very lovingly watered by Linda Ruff. And the circle itself is eventually to be dedicated to her father, Frederick Ruff, who was a longtime resident of Pine Hills and president of the neighborhood association, and was a prime example of what neighborhood interest and responsibility should be. So that'll be coming up sometime soon. That's it.
Thanks, Marilyn. Treasurer's report from Eric Shadow.
Hey, good evening, folks. So currently, we've been having a bunch of renewals come in, so that's good. They were up through mid-May, so we had a bunch that were mailed directly to my house, things like that, or through PayPal or the website. So, which is good. So if you haven't renewed, then we're going to cut you off. So currently, the PayPal account has $247.22. The main Trustco account, which is straightened out now, has $6,614.49. But a big chunk of that is committed, the $1140 for the sign, the new sign in the park. And there's $837 left for the Madison Park project. Don't know when that's gonna get used. Hopefully, maybe that can be rolled into some of the stuff we're talking about tonight. And so we're left with, that leaves us $4,637.49 is what we have on hand. And that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Eric. Membership, Will Sekula.
Hi, everyone. Here I am. So since last month, we've had quite a few renewals. And a few first-time members as well. I think last year we were somewhere in the low 30s, or last month. This month we're at 63. Some of that's just making sure I get everything in one spot. So some people may have accidentally been left out of last month's count. So yeah, we're at 63. I think the last one that came in through the website was at the beginning of May. So we may be putting out another reminder soon, which makes sense. And that's it for now.
Thanks, Will. Great. Yeah, I
Wait a
would say
minute, can
another
I ask
reminder.
Will, I'm sorry, I just wanna, so the total number of members, paid up members right now is just 63?
63, some of the, yep, 63.
Okay, because at
two
one point we had like over 100 some. So I don't understand. So these, it's just that we haven't gotten renewals or,
So I'm seeing
Well-
59 from 2020 and 2021 that have not renewed.
okay, 59
And so-
haven't renewed. Is that what
And
you
so
mean?
far, they've gotten just 2 reminders, Virginia. So the process is still underway. Remember, we started very late this year. But I think at this point, the reminders have to come more frequently and get to the harsher message, which Eric articulated.
Yeah, because that would be a shame if we lost all those 59, because we were up to quite a few, 100 and something or other last year. Okay, that's just, that, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go to, if there's nothing else, to updates from elected officials. I don't believe Owusu is here, but Alfredo Ballerin is. Alfredo, is there anything you'd like to update us on?
How's everybody doing? I hope you're all doing well. Safe. Not too many updates. I'll take any questions if anyone has. We're kicking off our 11 ward neighborhood cleanup series, where we go through each neighborhood in the ward. We'll be in the Pine Hills area on June 5th. We're meeting up at the corner of Washington Avenue and Cortland Place. And we'll clean up that area that's in the Pine Hills territory. Other than that, just moving forward, and if there's any questions or any concerns, feel free to give me a call. You can ask me, or I know Judy's here as well.
Thanks, Alfredo.
Alfredo, was that Washington and Cortland? Is that what you said?
Yes, June 5th, Washington and Cortland Place, from 10 to noon.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Thank you.
Judy, do you have updates you'd like to share with us? Judy DeShite?
Sure. So I hope Bob Ward is still on, because I
I
want
don't think he is, actually. I
Oh,
think he left.
Right. So,
Right.
Woodlawn Park, I do some walking around to the different parks, and Woodlawn Park, I'm down there, 2-3 times a week watering these days and doing some pickup. And it is a much loved and very active park. It's unusual for me to be down there and not have somebody at any time during the day. And certainly after school, there's a lot of activity down there, and it's great to see. The grass is growing in, it's doing well, and I'm now seeing people put out picnic blankets on the grassy area. Well, one of the nice things about Woodland Park that I want to say that I want, as I was thinking about why those other parks are not maybe as active as Woodland Park has a lot of shade. And people, a lot of dappled sunlight. It's not, a dense shade. I think that that's one of the appeals, having a lot of trees by the playgrounds. We also, in our plans, people talked about older people wanting to use benches and having like a picnic table in the area. And I think that people really love being able to sit and watch their kids and their play, and their grandkids play on the playground. So I want to encourage benches and also trees to be part of what people think about when they think about playgrounds as well. But it is, and people are bringing camp chairs now to hang out, read a book while the kids are playing and stuff. It's fabulous to see. I still, there's a portion of our park that they did some work on with bulldozers, and in the process they partially buried some construction bags that I believe have asbestos tile in it. There's a large screen TV, there's blankets, there's beer cans. So I've been continuing to, and a lot of broken bottles. The main part of the park, I've been clearing out the glass, buckets have been picked up, but there's too much, I want to say, hazardous waste in the other part of the park that they partially cleared, that I'm trying to get the city to address that before I get any volunteers in there in coordinating activities. And so that's something that I'm planning on having some samples of the tiles tested to figure out whether or not it is asbestos or not. I think most of you know that I've introduced a ban on tear gas. That's a direct result of the events of last summer. A ban on police use of tear gas, a direct result of last summer, and a lot of my constituents reaching out to me and asking me to take an active role in demilitarizing our police. And expressly banning tear gas and rubber bullets. It's been, as we have learned more about it, it's been 32 years since tear gas has been used on protesters, and a lot of people, and I find it disappointing that it would then be used for the first time in 32 years, when people are protesting the police activities, and especially people of color, and especially having it used in a residential area where people of color predominantly live. I am continuing to plug away on that issue, and I do hope that the council will take that up for a vote in the near future. The USDO, in addition to what Leah said, so we are we're finally getting around to our 6-month review. It is helpful that we've had a little more experience than 6 months where we're doing this comprehensive reorganization, really. And this is something that Brad Glass had done in his draft that he provided to the planning board almost 2 years ago now. So it's not only tweaking some of the provisions and providing some clarification where needed, and there's a lot of clarification they've learned, and I've learned there's a lot of need for clarification, but it's also reorganizing things to make the product more user friendly. So at this point, the planning committee is almost done with its review of the 7 articles if you count the fees, which is like a 2-page article. There's really 6 articles. We've completed our review, most of our review of articles 1, 2, and 3 of it. And one of the things that is happening is we're taking the standards, some of the standards that were in Article 2 and moving it over to Article 4. So as people look at any drafts and the planning board, the planning department has all of this on their webpage for all of the changes that are being recommended. It's important for people to understand that there's not a lot that is being removed unless it's duplicative or it's simply, and it's really simply being, a lot of it's being moved over to Article 2. That has also happened with regard to the overlay districts. I welcome people's suggestions for issues. It is, I gotta say, it is a little overwhelming what we're doing here. And we have a time schedule that we're a little bit behind on at this point, but we're trying to get something finalized by August so that we can have a public hearing on it. And all along, you know, these are public meetings, so we're encouraging people to chime in and provide us with suggestions, et cetera. But by August to have a final document that then we can have a hearing and hopefully have the council adopt in September before we get into the throes of the budget season, because the mayor's budget is introduced on October 1st. So it's very ambitious, but the main thing is a lot of us want the current council that is most familiar with it before we lose some of my expertise and Richard Conti's expertise and Kathy Fay's expertise to have us adopt something. Some of the bigger issues may need to be dropped out of our rewrite of this if we continue to be challenged. And it's just amazing. It's a challenge. So, but I'd rather get the bulk of it done and then maybe tease out some of the other issues that maybe will need to wait for more community input and for the common council members to and community to have more comfort with as we move forward. So we are meeting every other week on this. We are also meeting to the planning committee is also meeting to discuss small cell towers next Tuesday and standards for that. That's in addition to our rewrite of the USDO. And we also are will be interviewing on June 3rd and 9th candidates for our municipal internet advisory group that is supposed to make recommendations within 6 months. And I note that one of the areas of funding that the COVID funding specifically says, the Heroes, the Rescue Act says, is both infrastructure for internet and infrastructure for water and sewer. So I think it'll be great to get the recommendations from that group coming along in the next 6 months. Very important issue, and as you know, an issue that WUSU has really taken the lead on, arguing that municipal internet is the way to go. And I look forward to watching and listening to that discussion of that group as well. Glad to take
Thanks,
any
Judy. Virginia, you have a
Judy?
question? Looks like.
Yeah, I have a question. So do you, in terms of neighborhoods, you know, and the issues in the USDO that most affect neighborhoods in terms of, you know, the zones, the maps, all that stuff that we went through in the beginning, do you envision, or are you working on like major changes to those kinds of things? Because you know, neighborhoods had an opportunity in the beginning when we were going through this to meet with Brad and Chris and really look specifically at the maps in relation to definitions, et cetera. So as you're going through this, do you anticipate or do you see any substantial changes that will, you know, that the neighborhood should be aware of? Especially, and how many public hearings? Only one will there be?
Yeah, but every meeting of the planning committee, and we are meeting every other week, is open to the public and has a public comment period. You know, and you know, all of your council members, you know, are accessible. And like I say, all the information is online under some heading, I forget. I want to apologize. I haven't gotten around to sending out an update in a long period of time because I've just been swamped. But so Virginia, specifically to your question, yeah, there are going to be changes. There are some issues with regard to varying degrees of setbacks for when you're up against a residential area, and there are some uses for which in some cases up against a residential, like an R2 area, it'd be a 10-foot setback. For an R1 area, it's a 50-foot setback. For a residential village, it's a 500-foot setback. We will be taking a look at some of that to see, you know, to some extent, for my attitude, if you're up against a residential area and there's a use that is concerning, why wouldn't the setback then be the same amount? And setback meaning the distance between like a side yard or a rear yard usage. You know, so if you're going to have a car repair place, for example, you know, why would you have it be different for an RV, a residential village, versus an R1 versus, you know, an R2? It's where people live. So we want to take a look at that. We will be, you know, taking a hard look at that to see if what we've done makes sense. Keeping in mind, in some cases, some of the setbacks are built in, you know, especially like in a townhouse district or R2 districts, that's already built in on that. There's going to be some further discussion about what is meant by vegetative coverage, because there's some areas in which the current standards as written really aren't appropriate, like in the downtown area or maybe the warehouse district. I think making clarifications to there's been a lot of controversy about that we want to take a look at and be clear about. There's currently a request for us to approve, potentially separate and apart from, or rewrite of the USDO, allowing Capital Rep to have parking some distance from Capital Rep. So generally, you're supposed to have accessory parking. You're not supposed to have any more freestanding parking lots. You're supposed to have accessory parking on the same premises. In Capital Rep in its new location, that's not possible. Legal Aid Society has also found some difficulty with that. That does have some impact on some of the neighborhoods, Sheridan Hollow potentially being affected by that. On the other hand, it can help the viability of a place like Central Avenue and also the walkability of a city if you have parking behind a business location as opposed to in front of it, like some of the supermarkets that is kind of obnoxious.
Yeah.
So that's been a goal. So here's an opportunity to say, well, okay, we want to facilitate the vitality of Central Avenue and being able to have some of those people park behind, some of the customers who use legal aid and some of the employees use that. We have not yet, affordable housing is a topic, a big topic that we will be discussing in terms of what kind of incentives we want to provide people or what kind of outright requirements will exist for new developments. Housing for All has made some suggestions that we will be taking a look at on that. Accessory dwelling units is something that is been put on hold till we have a larger discussion, put on hold with the adoption that occurred in 2017. There are some people who want to see that discussion continue. We have had some preliminary discussions about that. I expect that essentially there's some issues with signage too. I expect that, and I want to say kind of a big issue is people who have corner lots are treated as though they have two front yards. And that prevents them from putting up certain height fences in what is otherwise really their rear yard. That has been something where people have applied, a number of people have applied for variances, and other people have fences that were put up probably at some point without the authorization of that. And so that's an issue. Personally, there's 2 people who put in for variances in the last year in my neighborhood who were prohibited from putting up a 6-foot high fence between them and a public street, whereas people next door get to put up a 6-foot high fence between their yard and the person on the corner lot who can't do that. I'm not sure.
Judy, we are kind of running late on time.
All right. So those are just some samples of, yes, there's lots, everything is on the table really for discussion.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks. Baroro Efekoro is with us, county legislator. Baroro?
Yes, thank you. Yes, the first thing I want to mention is that I have submitted the funding request for the mural on the House of Glass. So just waiting to hear back on that very soon, hopefully, so we can get started on that. And I wanted to also report on a few legislations that we have passed in the county ledge. The first one is Local Law B, which would pretty much help to combat blight by reducing the foreclosure window for vacant and abandoned buildings to 1 year. The second one is that we have passed the legislation to enable the county executive to work towards increasing the minimum wage for county employees to $15 an hour for all county employees. And then the next one is a school bus or camera legislation that we recently passed. That was actually initially my legislation, but I gave it to one of my colleagues to sponsor. But yeah, basically what it does is that if you are caught driving past a school bus that is displaying a stop sign, then you will have to pay a fine, because there are some drivers who are just so reckless and continue to drive even when they see the school bus is displaying a stop sign. So that is the issue we are trying to resolve with that legislation. And then the last one that I have is this common areas law, smoking ban on common areas law. Basically, this applies to 3 or more units, that there should be no smoking, basically banning on smoking in any common areas that is used, any area, basically like the lobby and courtyard, and anywhere that is used by more than one family in a multi-dwelling unit, which is 3 or more family units. So we are banning smoking in those units, and you can be fined. And if you find anyone that is smoking and it's disturbing to you in a multi-dwelling unit, and you talk to them and they still continue to smoke, you can call the health department and they can take action from there. So those are some of the legislations that we have passed. I wanted to report also on the windmill that is being built at the Albany Ports Authority, but there is a lot of information on that. So I guess I'm just going to send an email to John so that he can forward it to everybody, because I have a lot of information on that. And hopefully that will be one of the game changers for Albany County, because thousands of jobs are going to be created. There's also going to be a training to help train people to actually handle the jobs, high-skilled jobs, and very good paying jobs. That is all I have for tonight.
Thanks, Baroro. Copy Virginia too on that email, because she's the one who generally packages the stuff that we put through the listserv or
Awesome.
Google group, the proper. Okay, thanks a lot. Any questions for Baroro, anyone? Well, I'm not seeing any. So we are to the end of our agenda. Thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you in June. Marilyn Douglas will be chairing our next meeting, as I will be traveling. I will try to attend, but I cannot guarantee the Wi-Fi. So see you again soon. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.